Hello, and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation with a change maker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable carbon-neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. The story of a sustainable world will unfold in many places and across many websites, social networks, and video channels. Our guest today is Jane-Velez-Mitchell, a former Headline News CNN reporter and anchor. Jane launched Unchained TV earlier this year to provide a dedicated source of video storytelling about the environment and sustainable living. It offers free video programming through an app for iPhone and Android devices, as well as on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, and LG and Samsung smart TVs. The network covers stories about vegan cooking and living, animal rights, climate, and activist actions that seldom reach the air on mainstream channels. Like Earth911, Unchained TV will focus on solutions. Jane launched the network saying, quote, "I covered crime stories for decades. Climate change is the ultimate crime of the century as it could kill us all. Yet obvious solutions are largely ignored by the media, government, and corporations. It's time to fill that gap." Unchained TV has launched several series, including Peeled, it's a vegan cooking competition program, and Pig Little Lies, a series about the cruel practice of buying and then dumping so-called teacup pigs. You can learn more about Unchained TV at www.unchainedtv, no space, no dash, unchainedtv.com. Welcome to the show, Jane. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, pleasure to have you here to talk about Unchained TV. So congratulations on your early momentum. You're up and running. You're on a number of different distribution channels. How's it going? Are you reaching people, and are they acting on the information they're getting?
Yes, Unchained TV, which is our global vegan streaming network run by a nonprofit. So we're not in for the money. I don't take any salary. And we've had a lot of success. We've already surpassed our millionth view, and we're growing very rapidly. We are working hard to always update the technology. In fact, as soon as I get off of this Zoom with you, I'm on another meeting about how to increase our reach through live streaming on the app, which would be really take us to a whole new level. And our Unchained TV, which if anybody wants to go in, and I urge you to, because it's a portal to a new way of living that we really all are going to have to transition to if we want to survive as a human species. But you can enter this portal online at UnchainedTV.com. Just go to UnchainedTV.com and click Watch Now. You can download it for free on your phone. Just go to your app store and put in Unchained TV, one word. You can watch it on your television set at home via your Apple TV device, your Roku device, your Amazon Fire Stick, or if you have a smart TV like an LG or Samsung smart TV, they have a little search bar there that says streaming channels. You just put in Unchained TV and there it is. So we've made it very easy. You don't have to give your email. And really the sad fact is I wouldn't be doing this if the mainstream media were accurately reporting what's really going on. And they don't. Why? Look at the TV commercials. Meat, dairy, and pharmaceuticals. So those are the three industries that would have to change radically or collapse if people got healthy and started eating a plant-based diet. So there is literally a news media blackout on this information. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I was in the mainstream media for 40 years. It's not like somebody has to knock on your desk and go, "Hey, don't talk about this." Anybody with half a brain looks at the commercials and does the math and realizes, well, if all of your commercials are fast food and pharmaceutical, with the exception of an occasional insurance commercial, then obviously you're not going to be holding this industry's feet to the fire.
Well, so why was now, 2022, a good time to introduce Unchained TV? Because you are talking about an absence of information. It's something we've addressed for a long time too. But why did this make it the right time for you?
Well, first of all, streaming technology is coming to the forefront now. Cable TV is collapsing. Older people are cutting their cords. Younger people never had cable. They're on their phones mostly, but when they do watch television, they're doing it through a streaming channel. So streaming is the wave of the future because it's cheaper. If you have a device like an Amazon Fire Stick that you pay $25 for, and you manage to scrape together enough for streaming for a smart TV, you want to watch something and
Right.
you don't want to have subscriptions to 20 things. Then it would bring it right back to the cost of cable. So most people have a few key things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO, Apple Plus. That's what I have. Okay.
Mhm.
Everything else I want to watch for free. Free is the number one search term for streaming device users who are growing by the millions. I think a couple of years ago it was 50 million Amazon Fire Stick users. It's going up exponentially. These devices are being sold, not just Amazon Fire Stick, but the Roku device, the Apple TV streaming device. So that's how people are starting to get their content on their TV screen. We want to be a part of that. And the other answer to your question is, when we started this nonprofit as a social media news network, we were getting millions of views on Facebook. We got 17 million views one year after Facebook Live came along. Then it dropped to 11 million. Then it dropped to 9 million. Then it dropped to 7 million. And then it's like 4 million. And then it's like, who's watching Facebook? The algorithms has changed. Sure, a lot of people are still on Facebook. Obviously, it's still a very hugely successful platform. But the way their algorithms work, they're not sending everything we do out to thousands of people. It's become a lot more pay for play. So
it's almost useless as a distribution channel from my perspective, because you can't reach anybody without paying to reach them. And the idea was that it was an organic environment where people's interests would define things. And, I happen to have started a streaming news network back in the 90s, which was really
wow.
way soon.
Yeah.
And but we got up to about 3.5 million visitors, watchers on a regular basis, but every week, financial news, at a time when the market was going crazy. It was the web bubble era. Today, you've got a vast awareness of sustainability issues, environmental issues, the need to embrace a vegan or at least a more vegan lifestyle. All of these things are going on. And I believe you're right. Mainstream media doesn't cover much of this in any great depth. But what I do see is that they're covering more of what Earth911 has covered for a long time at a very surfacey level. It's the time to change coverage, right? And it's usually cast around, and here's the crisis, rather than here are solutions, which is where I think Unchained and Earth911 both play to begin to bring important topics to the fore. What do you think the media needs to be covering in order to help people make those sustainability and climate-related decisions?
Well, they talk about fossil fuels, and not everybody can afford to go out and get a Tesla. I've been driving Priuses for years, and I have a Prius now. I'm on my third Prius. But there is something that each and every one of us can do 3 times a day to lower our carbon footprint and to actually reverse climate change, which the governments are saying, oh, we can't make it any better, but we can stop it from getting worse. No, we could actually reverse climate change. And that is eat a plant-based diet. Now, when COP26 happened, we actually had a reporter at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, and she was the only one. By the way, her coverage was completely different than mainstream media. She was showing all sorts of groups protesting outside, having die-ins, people talking about veganism. Mainstream media did not mention that one iota. We also went in and we actually looked at what they were serving, and they were serving ham. And what they did was they put a carbon price tag on every food item. So they had the carbon price tag on the ham, and then they had the carbon price tag on the tofu. And of course, the ham was exponentially higher, to the point where even the Washington Post, which is definitely not a pro-vegan periodical or newspaper, did an article basically saying, wait a second, if the ham is so much higher than the plant-based, why did you serve the ham? Which was a good question. That was an article they did. It was one of those rare breakthroughs. And so if you convince people to go more plant-based, then we could reduce the number of animals being manufactured. And essentially, that's what they're being manufactured. They're not making love on these factory farms. They're all raped into existence. I was a crime reporter for many years. Animal agriculture is a rape, abduction, and murder operation, plain and simple. All the animals are artificially inseminated. The term in the industry is called rape rack, where they are literally somebody puts a fist up their private parts, and then their babies are taken from them, and then they're all killed. So that's a rape, abduction, and murder operation. And sorry to be so, strident about it. I love the movie Don't Look Up, where, hey, a meteor is coming. It's going to kill us all. Oh, you're so strident, I mean, we're in an existential crisis right now. Look at Fort Myers. I graduated from NYU in 1977. My first job was in Fort Myers, Florida. I spent a year and a half there at WBBH-TV, which I was watching yesterday. They took their feed on the networks because Fort Myers Beach is kaput.
Yeah, it's gone.
The causeway, I was biking, and you can't bike over the causeway to Sanibel. I used to hitchhike over the causeway to Sanibel and then bike around Sanibel. That causeway is got a huge chunk missing. I was looking at this and thinking, oh my God, I know Fort Myers pretty darn well because I've been back there several times. It's a beautiful area and it's destroyed. What is it going to take for people to wake up? That's why we started Unchained TV. And, people think, well, it's a sacrifice. What do you eat? Grass? No, there's so much more variety in plant-based vegan cooking. We only kill in this society, maybe 5 animals: cows, pigs, turkeys, goats, lambs, chickens, pigs. In vegetables and fruits and nuts and legumes and grains, there are hundreds of thousands of combinations. We were doing a live cooking show called Lunch Break Live, a vegan cooking show on Facebook for 5 years till the algorithms made it not really worth the while. Right. And we did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recipes, never planning, just, hey, it's your turn, do whatever you want. And hardly a recipe was repeated because there's so much versatility. But see, people are brainwashed. They're brainwashed. And this is what I did, a documentary that's on Amazon Prime, and it's also on Unchained TV, called Countdown to Year Zero. And we profile an internet genius who has now devoted his life to trying to create a vegan world. And he said, look, we're all being factory farmed. It's not just the animals who are being tortured. They have to get us to be fat, sick, and nearly dead so we can sell us all these pharmaceuticals, the cholesterol-lowering pills, the erectile dysfunction pills, the this pill, the that pill. A very good percentage of these pills would be unnecessary if we switched to a plant-based diet. Now they're all going into Alzheimer's and dementia, which, again, there's a big argument to be made when the arteries get clogged from cholesterol, which comes from animal products. You can go up and down the supermarket aisles. There's zero cholesterol in any vegan products. Zero. Beyond Meat Burger, zero cholesterol. You can look at the label. Animals produce cholesterol. So if you have high cholesterol, chances are you're eating too much meat and dairy. Very good chances. Now, let me just finish this because it's so important. Alzheimer's is skyrocketing. Dementia, foggy brain, whatever you want to call it. It's in pretty much exact parallel to the rise of fast food. When cholesterol clogs the arteries, it doesn't just go to the heart. It's systemic. That's why erectile dysfunction is a precursor of heart disease, because the vessels in that part of the body are smaller. So it's the same thing with the brain. There are vessels in the brain. So there's a very good argument to be made. And in fact, I was talking to a doctor recently. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be. I'm not going to say anything unequivocally. But what I am saying is do the math. Do the math. When I was a kid, everybody's parents didn't have Alzheimer's. Today, every time I talk to somebody who's, over 45, oh, my mother and father have Alzheimer's. It's like, where did this come from? The diet.
Well, how do you create new programming then to address this? I mean, that's a challenge. You're a nonprofit. So how do you source programs and raise the funds to get somebody out there to tell those stories?
Well, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, so we rely on donations. We had a big launch party late April. We did very well. A lovely woman who's a vegan activist donated her mansion, and we had a great outdoor party. It was very successful. We have some other major donors who care about this issue. And so we're not in it to make money. And frankly,
but you still have to come up with the funding to get somebody out there. Yeah. So do those donors define those stories, or do you come up with editorially independent ideas?
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, the major networks like NBC are spending literally billions of dollars creating their streaming networks. We did ours for tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, which you can do.
Yes, you can do. So then Are we paying somebody $20 million a year contract to do a show? No. We have all these vegan contributors giving us their documentaries. Okay. So the famous Sean Munson gave us Earthlings. Chris Del Force gave us Dominion. Marissa Wolfson gave us Vegucated. The list goes on and on. I just got one yesterday, Saved by Jane, which is a great documentary. These people are doing it to get the word out. So we get documentaries, we get cooking shows like Chef AJ. She's very well known. She was one of these people. She was on the Johnny Carson show. Then she lost 50 pounds on a plant-based diet. She became this chef. She gave us many videos. All these organizations, PETA, Animal Outlook, In Defense of Animals, Their Turn, the Save Movement, the Climate Change Movement, Plant-Based Treaty, they all gave us their videos. So we have about 700 videos. Then we also do original videos. Now, we can't be like some cult site where people visit and go, whoa. So we do fun programming too. Like we did the world's first reality series starring pigs called Pig Little Lies. And it's a 5-part miniseries, and it's been very well received. My gosh, One Green Planet did 5 articles on it. It was all over, certainly green media, but it also got mainstream media coverage as well. And so that was a really adorable show with a very serious message that pigs are the 5th smartest animal on Earth, and they're highly intelligent. They're highly emotional. And there's this one moment where you could see the mother pig, Mama Beatrice, is trying to protect her kids. She doesn't know where she's being moved to. She's just being moved from the back laundry room with her brood to the front where there's a much better place that's been set up. Unchained TV bought a house, literally, where we set it up so that they had a place to go at night. And it was the Unchained TV Rescue Center. But she didn't know that. She just knew she was being separated from her babies. And you could see her emotion. She was panting and she hunched down. And then the woman who runs the sanctuary, Cindy Brady, kneeled down and talked to her, said, "It's okay, B. We're not and she, now, of course, B doesn't understand English, but B understood the feelings, the tone. Loving feelings, the tone. And she calmed down and she moved and went in, and the kids came in with her, the little piglets. And it was an emotional moment with a happy ending. But it really does show people, wow, these animals are very, very emotional. They're smarter than our dogs, pigs. Okay. And we keep them in crates the size of their bodies, literally never able to turn around. It is a torture device. And I defy anybody to look at a pig gestation crate and say this is not a torture device. If you can look at a 50,000 pigs, each in a crate the size of their bodies, unable to turn around, unable to scratch themselves, where they chomp on the bars in front of them because they're going mad, and they break their teeth on the bars in front of them. And you could say that's okay. Go to a psychiatrist immediately because you're a sociopath.
Well, so, I watched one of your activist videos, a guy who was breaking in the night and documenting those conditions. And it's very compelling.
Guess what? He's being put on trial starting next week, and he could go to prison for 11 years for going into a Smithfield factory farm in Utah. And he and his team, who documented everything with 3D cameras they got from a high-tech company, they documented the entire thing, because you know what the industry always says? Oh, they always want to fire the low-level people, and they always say, this is taken out of context. This is just one shot. It was taken out of context. Well, they thought, well, okay, let's have 3D 360 cameras that show everything that's happening all around as you go in. So guess what happened? The judge is not allowing them to show video of the alleged crime. This is a trial happening in St. George, Utah in October 2022, starting next week. Okay.
Well, so here's a question. As the network, do you also need to be raising money to defend those journalists doing journalism? Because on the one hand, you could say, oh, yeah, breaking and entering. Okay, well, sure. But that's also documenting the behavior of Smithfield. Do you need to be raising money to create a defense fund for people who are going out and doing this kind of investigative journalism?
Well, Wayne Shung, who is the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, is got his own organization that raises funds. But certainly we can't do everything for all people. Like we will get involved. Like when we built that house for the pigs, we did it obviously we were doing a show about it too. So we have to stick with media, essentially. And so, we've got our hands full. Like if you looked at my schedule, it's hilarious. I'm here in my living room couch and, usually hundreds of people start a network. I've got maybe 4 or 5 people who help me. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they do that, not as a full-time job. We have no staff. Mm-hmm. I don't take a salary. So people are always contacting me. Well, have your IT department reach out. It's hilarious. I laugh. So what I do is just psychologically, I'll take off one hat. Okay. Yesterday I was out videotaping. That's my videotape hat. Now I'm going to put my editor's hat. I'm going to edit. Now I'm going to put my programming hat on. Now I'm going to put my news host hat on and do live coverage. So I'm constantly just putting on different hats and doing, I worked in mainstream media for 40 years, most recently at CNN. I had my own show on CNN Headline News for 6 years. We covered crime. We were live every night. So that's why I'm so excited about getting back into live, because that'll be the game changer for our network. But I know how a network works because I've seen it. I've been in networks for many years. It's just a question of replicating that and trying to do it all. Is very difficult, but I can't think of anything more important, because let me tell you something. Okay. This is not me talking. This is, okay, let's start with Sir David Attenborough. Great documentary. I believe it's on Netflix. I urge everybody to watch it. It's called Breaking Boundaries. There's, I don't know how many, 7, 8, 9 boundaries. Once we break them, there's no going back. Obvious one, melting of the glaciers. Okay. That's happening. Ocean dead zones. That's happening. Those kinds of things. He has 9 of them. We're just tearing through those things. Once those are done and we can't go back, we're finished. Okay. When the temperature gets to a certain point, and now I'm going to quote an IPCC reviewer, an intergovernmental panel on climate change reviewer, who I watched his interview. He's a scientist. He said, look, when the temperatures hit a certain point, what's going to happen is the crops will fail on a massive scale. He said this will manifest by you going into the supermarket and there won't be food there. Maybe some old cans from a couple of years ago, but there's not going to be any food there. No fresh food, no grains. I immediately went out and bought a big thing of popcorn. I said, okay, I can live on popcorn for a year if I have to. Now, here's another thing that's happening. Okay.
Hold on. I do need to take a quick commercial break. I want
sure.
Come back and continue this discussion, because this is a lot of important stuff to cover. We'll be right back with Jane-Velez-Mitchell. We're back to continue talking with Jane-Velez-Mitchell. She's the founder of Unchained TV, a vegan video news network. Jane, you're talking about a lot of really important issues, but I want to also get into how you're telling these stories. And one of the recent pieces that I watched you do was the coverage of the comedian Kevin Hart's new vegan restaurant, which is being put into a lot of underserved communities, as well as just being a vegan restaurant. And we've talked about this niche communication capability that we have today. Are celebrities particularly important to getting these messages out, to getting their passionate fans to start to think about these issues?
Absolutely. So the Kevin Hart restaurant, Kevin Hart himself is mostly plant-based, but he's not a vegan. But he opened the first of what he says is going to be the vegan McDonald's, called Hart House. So there's so much happening in this space that literally it's like a ticker tape. I could just be completely scattered all day going, whoa, whoa, whoa. So I got a call and say, hey, are you at the opening of Hart House? I was like, what? Well, it's near LAX. Well, I'm near LAX. I live in Venice, right near the beach. The beach is right over there. I'm looking at it. So I jumped in my car. I went over there, and it was a madhouse. Hundreds and hundreds of people lined up down each street in each other direction to get into this place. There was some major media that had been contacted prior to follow the first customer in. I just walked right in with my camera, and they're like, it's media. I go, I am media. And I went right in, I shot the whole thing, and I got the whole video. And I was doing this on my cell phone, because if you have a GoPro 13 Pro Max, it has a cinematic quality that's incredible. And I had a stabilizer, and I shot the whole story, and I just did it on the fly. And it was really inspiring because these people are clamoring for something different. like I said, we're all being factory farmed, and especially minority communities where sometimes there's only a choice of fast food, all right, or you go to your local bodega and get some chips.
Processed food.
Yeah, processed food. And, does the mainstream media mention that processed meat is officially cancer causing? Hello. But then when Beyond Meat Burger comes out, well, it's processed. Well, guess what? If you take a mango and a banana and put it in your Cuisinart, that's processed. Not all processed is created equal. Not all processed food is cancer causing. But, people, here's the problem. When you're an addict, which I wrote a book called Addict Nation, how we live in an addictogenic culture, because the powers that be have realized there's no better customer than an addict. Okay. Mm-hmm. An addict will come back for that pill, for that fast food burger, for that bottle of booze over and over again. So they try to make things addictive. Fast food is, in my opinion, addictive. It's loaded with sugar, salt, and fat, 3 things we're biologically pre-programmed to crave. And so that's why people just eat it obsessively. And then, just like an addict will defend his right to have a heroin or alcohol, people very ferociously defend their right to eat this way, not realizing that they're the suckers in the whole scheme. Okay, not realizing that they're the ones destined to get heart disease and die of cancer and all these other things that are dietary related that could be prevented with a healthy plant-based diet. So we try to get the word out to people with this programming. So we have more than 700 videos right now and counting. Just before I went on, I started uploading a video that we shot at the Mercy for Animals Gala, where we talked to Succession star James Cromwell, who recently glued his hand to a Starbucks counter to protest the fact that Starbucks, which purports to be a progressive company interested in sustainability, charges extra for plant-based milk.
That gets to the point. Is James Cromwell, who everybody loves from Babe and all the other things that he's done, but particularly Babe, glues his hand, and he got a lot of coverage for that.
Yeah.
Kevin Hart can change a neighborhood with his influence. And we're talking about these micro content issues at this point. We're trying to tell these stories that are going to start small and grow big. How big does an audience have to be for you to invest some time and effort in telling a story for them? Because I think that's where a lot of people who might want to contribute to your network are thinking, I'm too small. How big do they need to be in order to get that first sense of engagement and traction with that topic?
Are you talking about content providers?
Well, I'm talking about somebody who wants to make a video and start to create that.
I'll take any video that meets the criteria. Mm-hmm. It meets the criteria.
Okay, what are they?
Well, it's we advocate a vegan plant-based diet. Okay, mm-hmm. So we had a naturalist send us a whole bunch of videos. He's great. He's done for National Geographic, really top flight cinematography. And he said, "Oh, I'd love to help you." I was introduced to a friend. He sent me 7 videos. So I looked at them. Well, some of them fit, but one, he said, well, yeah, no, these are vegan. But it turns out that 5 minutes into one of them, there's some indigenous people killing a whale and cutting it up. I said, I'm sorry, but that doesn't fit our criteria. We don't show anything where animals are being slaughtered, because there is one false underlying assumption that underlines almost all societal ills. And that's that we have to kill to survive, that life is a zero-sum game. For me to win, you have to lose. For me to eat, you have to die. Okay. For me to have a good country, you have to suffer. And so if we just remove that one underlying false assumption, a lot of our problems would fade away. So we do not advocate anything that shows killing, shows exploitation of animals. Aside from that, look, we had a guy who's a jazz person. He's not a vegan, but he said, you know what? I really like what you're doing. And I videotape improvisational jazz. So what if I did a show called with people doing improvisational jazz, and then they go and eat a vegan meal afterwards? I said, sounds delicious. He said, okay, let's call it Sounds Delicious. And he sends me these videos, and they're hilarious. They're not vegan people, but they're performing improvisational, brilliant jazz. And then they go and have a vegan meal. He videotapes it. He sends it to me. He's not a vegan, but he's we don't want to be an exclusive club. We want everybody to join us. So we're not saying you have to be vegan to provide content. We just don't want content that shows animal exploitation or death. We wouldn't show somebody modeling a fur coat. Obviously, we protest against that.
Thinking about journalistic ethics and how do we tell these stories and how do we tell our audience that we are practicing those ethics? For instance, the conversation about an indigenous community that does a lot of good environmental stuff, but also decides, as the Macaw tribe up here in Washington State does, that they need to harvest a whale every once in a while for ritual purposes, seems contradictory. And that's part of what we also are trying to deal with as a society, is the contradictions that are already built in. So how do you create programming that creates a dialogue but across those potential boundaries?
Yeah, I have no power over what other people do, but the only power I have is to set the boundaries for our network. So I don't care if it was, now it would be the King of England, but it would have been until recently the Queen of England is chopping up a whale, or it's whoever it is.
Sure, but it represents the full story. How do we tell the full story in a way that we can give our audiences?
Well, and first of all, okay, let me just say that the mainstream media is not telling the full story. We are telling the story that they're not telling. So
how do we do it better?
Well, we're doing it. Why don't we ask the mainstream media why they don't do it better? Why don't they talk about the impact of animal agriculture? Why isn't the fact that we could solve world hunger if we weren't feeding 80 billion land animals a good percentage of the food that's grown every year, while there are children right now in Somalia and Afghanistan, et cetera, dying of starvation? Why isn't the New York Times telling that story? So let's hold the feet to the fire of the major networks and news organizations that are systematically not covering this. Okay. They know about it, but they don't cover it. And what they're doing then is spelling our death warrant collectively. I mean, this is a life or death issue for everybody. Look at what happened to Fort Myers. Does it have to destroy your house before you realize something is wrong here? And yet it's not being covered. See, here's the thing. Yes, we have to reduce fossil fuels, of course, but it's one piece of the puzzle. If we don't look at the impact of animal agriculture, we won't be able to solve the climate crisis. The United Nations back in 2006 did a report, which you can Google, called Livestock's Long Shadow, which said that animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gases than all transportation combined. Okay? So why is it that the news media is constantly talking about Tesla and all these other companies, and they don't say anything about the dietary issues? Now, some of these environmentalists say, well, people are going to eat what they want to eat. Well, yeah, if it's subsidized by hundreds of billions of dollars by your tax dollars, you're being ripped off. If we went to a plant-based diet, we could radically reduce our healthcare costs. Okay, 1 out of every 4 people dies of a heart attack. Diabetes is rampant. Cancer is rampant. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is connected to dietary issues. So do they advocate prevention? No, because the healthcare system is also running as a business. And if you don't have sick people, what are you going to do? In fact, I listen to the financial networks all the time, and all they talk about, healthcare, those healthcare stocks, whoa, they're skyrocketing. Yeah, because everybody's so sick. Americans' longevity is going downhill. Now, before you say, well, you're some radical, guess what? This is how our grandparents ate. Fast food is a very new phenomenon. Okay, it really just started in the 60s. It was maybe infancy, late 50s, but it started in the 60s. It grew a little in the 70s. Now it's like you drive down every strip mall in America and it's one fast food joint after the other. It's not tradition, people. It's this monster that has grown out of industrialized animal agriculture, which is also a very new phenomenon. Okay? This is all very new, and it's got to end, or we're going to go bye-bye.
So what are the stories? What are the stories that you're telling right now that you suggest our listeners take a look at to get started understanding this?
Oh, yeah. Jump on UnchainedTV.com. And we have, if you're interested in health, we have a whole series of doctors who talk about the health issues. Dr. Michael Greger, who was a New York Times bestselling author who wrote How Not to Die, has given us his videos. So he can talk about whether it's heart disease, whether it's cancer, whether it's high cholesterol, all of those issues. He has different videos on them. So whatever, diabetes, he explains, because it's very complicated why eating meat and dairy contributes to diabetes, but it does. So you can look at all those videos. If you're interested in the environmental aspects, well, we have Countdown to Year Zero, which we explain. Okay, I'll just say it very quickly. Trees absorb carbon. A huge percentage of the trees on this planet and other carbon-absorbing forestry have been destroyed for two main reasons: to create cattle grazing land and to grow crops to feed 80 billion farmed animals. We're only 8 billion humans. So, for example, 80% of the soy is fed to farmed animals. Okay. It's an inefficient food source. I don't care. You can debate the stats. Does it take 3 pounds of grain, 5 pounds of grain, 8 pounds of grain, or 25 pounds of grain to create a pound of steak? But you don't have to know higher math that if you took that grain and fed it directly to people, you could feed more people. Okay. So we could live in a world of natural abundance where nobody goes hungry, but scarcity creates profit. Okay. That's the essential law of supply and demand. So I would just urge people, rip open the meat matrix. Okay. The other day, there was a woman, it's a big news story. She was eating a fast food joint. She opened up her little burger and there was a slice of ham and there was a nipple on it. They didn't slice the nipple off. She screamed and threw her sandwich in the air and, it was a big story. Well, who did she think she was eating? See, that's when you're trapped in the meat matrix. The essence of all evil is that some suffering doesn't count. You can look back in history and make your own examples. And we'd all like to tell ourselves, wow, if we lived in the time of blah, 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 we'd be one of those courageous people. Well, ask yourself, what are you doing now? 80 billion animals are raised in institutionalized torture every year and killed. It's making the planet sick. It's making us sick, and it's torturing the animals. What are you doing about it? Are you going out and eating that fast food burger or that fried chicken and without a thought and saying it doesn't count? I get a pass on this. Well, you don't get a pass on this. It's coming back to haunt with health issues, with environmental crises. It's got to end, and it will end. And I'll just say this. The other day, and it wasn't on mainstream media, of course not, but somebody grabbed with their phone and put it on TikTok. They drove in Kansas down a road where there were thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of cows dead with their legs up in the air. They had died from the heat. Yeah. Okay. It's unsustainable. It will end. If only we could do it, but Mother Nature is going to do for us what we could not do for ourselves. It's going to be too hot to raise these animals. It's already happening. The price of hay is skyrocketing. In Texas, people are sending their cattle to slaughter because it's too expensive. And it's not just, people say, well, it's high because of the Ukraine war. No, it's also high because it's getting harder and harder and harder to grow crops with the heat waves that we're having. Nature is trying to tell us something. With the pandemic is the result of animal abuse. Did anybody cover that? It most likely started in the Wuhan market. What is that? It's a retail slaughterhouse where they kill wild animals and domesticated animals, and there's bloods, guts, feces, urines, eyeballs, everything floating around. How many mainstream news articles were on that? Almost none. Almost none.
So, Jane, clearly there's a lot to talk about, and I want to thank you for taking time to discuss what you're doing with Unchained TV. I hope people will take a look and think about what you're asking.
Yes, please take a look. The clock is ticking.
We've been talking with Jane-Velez-Mitchell, who's the founder of Unchained TV, which is a vegan video news network. Check it out at UnchainedTV.com. Unchained TV is all one word, no spaces, no dashes, UnchainedTV.com. Jane said, used the phrase, a piece of the puzzle. And I think that what we have to recognize is that the whole story of the climate transition is going to combine the awful facts of our industrial economy, which she went into in great detail, as well as address the contradictions that provide justifications for bad environmental behavior, as well as confronting the challenges of moving billions of people from one way of living to another, while not driving them all into abject poverty. Justice and environmental responsibility are of a piece when you look at how complex the natural and social systems in which we live actually are. And recognizing that and telling the whole story, including the parts you don't always feel comfortable with, is the challenge facing our media. And our media has not always done a good job of doing that, to put it mildly. I hope you take a minute to share this show or any of the other sustainability in your ear programs that we have in our archive. We've got hundreds of interviews over there. And, we hope that you'll take the time to share these stories, because, folks, you are the amplifiers who are going to take this narrative and get it out there to your friends, family, your coworkers. Let's get everybody thinking about how to do this. You can find Sustainability in Your Ear on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, and other fine purveyors of podcast goodness. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe with Earth911. We're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.